After studying this module, we shall be able to understand the trade-off between unemployment and inflation, understand empirical Phillips curve, know about the relationship between unemployment and expectation, and evaluate the long run and short run Phillips curve.
Classical economists assume wage price flexibility. Such an assumption is possible when there is informational efficiency. If there is full informational efficiency, then employers and employees have the same expectations about the price level in future. Under such a scenario, if there is a tendency of an increase in the price level in future, then the response of the money wage rate shall also increase. As a consequence, increase in money wage rate cannot bring additional employment in the economy because there is only an increase in money wage rate but not a corresponding increase in the real wage rate.
Real wage rate is equal to money wage rate divided by price level. Wage price flexibility assumes that wages are perfectly flexible so as to maintain economy at full employment level. If there is a tendency of price level to increase due to increase in aggregate demand, thereby creating upward pressure on employment level, then money wage rate shall rise instantaneously so as to curb any additional employment. On the other hand, if there is a tendency of price level to decrease due to decrease in aggregate demand, thereby creating downward pressure on employment level, then money wage rate shall fall instantaneously so as to bail out any fall in employment level.
The employment level can only be changed through changes in the real wage rate. Now, if the rate of change of money wage rate is equal to the rate of change of the price level as propounded by the axiom of wage price flexibility, then there would be no increase in the real wage rate. As a consequence, employment remains at the same level. Hence, there will be no trade off between employment level and inflation as per classical economists.
Classical economists assume that the economy shall always remain at full employment level. As a result, natural rate of unemployment is zero. However, neoclassical economists stressed that there will always remain some pure frictional unemployment in economy even at full employment level of output. This is known as natural rate of unemployment, and as natural rate of unemployment is not zero, so there is natural rate of employment which is different from full employment level. However, there are some stylized facts about the economy. These facts are: contrary to the notion of pure frictional unemployment, that is, natural rate of unemployment, it has been observed that in the long run, actual data shows that unemployment fluctuates more than what is expected due to frictional employment. Actual data shows that there is a systematic relationship between rate of change of wages and the rate of unemployment. The rate of change of money wage rate is directly related to rate of change in price level. Going by classical economist assumption of wage price flexibility, then change in money wage rate should not affect unemployment level. However, empirically, the change in money wage rate does affect employment. A. W. Phillips had empirically observed this phenomenon in 1958. He studied the relationship between rate of change in money wage and the rate of unemployment in the United Kingdom during 1861 to 1957. He plotted this data on a graph and tried to estimate a curve for the observed data. In the diagram shown here, on the y-axis, the rate of change of money wages as a percentage per year is shown. On the x-axis, the rate of unemployment in percentage term is given. The curve estimated by A.W. Phillips was found to be downward sloping and convex to origin. As there is a trade off between inflation and unemployment, therefore, policymakers could choose different combinations of inflation and unemployment rate. The natural level of unemployment can be determined by drawing a vertical line to x-axis from the point where the curve intersects the horizontal line, emerging through the point where the rate of change of money wage rate in percentage per year is zero. Hence, at natural rate of unemployment, inflation is zero. If the objective of the policymakers is to reduce unemployment rate, then they have to tolerate a certain level of inflation. Conversely, if policymakers want to control inflation, then they have to tolerate a certain unemployment rate.
The Phillips curve suggests that money wages adjust slowly to changes in price and employment level. Money wages are not perfectly flexible so as to always maintain the natural level of employment as postulated by classical economists. Money wages are sluggish in response to price and employment level. Therefore, money wages are sticky in nature and they adjust slowly to price and employment level. Hence, the sticky wages model better represents the reality rather than the perfect wage price flexibility model. There is no informational efficiency in the market as assumed by classical economists. In reality, employers are in possession of more information than employees. Due to this, there is an information gap between employers and employees. This information gap leads to the formation of the sticky wages model as against the model of wage price flexibility. The sticky wage assumption holds that wage rate is sluggish in response to the price level. As a consequence, any change in money wage rate would lead to a change in the real wage rate, thereby affecting the level of employment. The expected price for time period T is slow in response to the actual rise in the price level in time period T. This is due to the lack of information and adaptive expectations. That is, expectations converge with reality with a time lag.
A set of equations can be made to represent this relationship. Expected real wage rate for time period T, that is EWRT minus 1, is equal to money wage rate divided by expected price level for time period T. Actual real wage rate in time period T, that is WRT, is equal to money wage rate divided by actual price level in time period T. The difference between expected real wage rate and actual real wage rate is that the former is made in advance and there is a time lag between the expected and the actual real wage rate. Hence, expected real wage rate for time period T is made in time period T-1. For this reason, T-1 is added as subscript in expected real wage rate.
Employment depends upon the relationship between expected wage rate for time period T and the actual wage rate in time period T. Employees who are in possession of less information make their decision on the basis of the expected real wage rate for time period T. However, employers who are in possession of more accurate information regarding the markets take their decision on the basis of actual wage rate in time period T. The actual real wage rate in time period T represents the equilibrium level of real wage rate at the natural rate of employment or the natural rate of unemployment, as may be the case. If there is no difference between expected real wage rate for time period t and the actual wage rate in time period t, then there shall be no impact on the employment level, and the employment level shall remain at the natural rate of employment. However, if expected real wage rate for time period t and the actual wage rate in time period t are not equal, then there will be either an increase or a decrease in the employment level.
For analyzing the variations in employment level, the given ratio will be useful. If this ratio is equal to 1, then there will be no increase in employment level. However, if this ratio is more than 1, that is, expected real wage rate for time period t is more than actual real wage rate in time period t, then there shall be increase in the employment level. Conversely, if this ratio is less than 1, that is, expected real wage rate for time period t is less than actual real wage rate in time period t, then there shall be a decrease in the employment level. Now, the aforementioned relationship can be expressed in terms of employment and price level as shown here. Employment as given by E is equal to function of expected real wage rate for time period T divided by actual real wage rate in time period T, as expected real wage rate for time period T divided by actual real wage rate in time period T is equal to actual price level in time period T divided by expected price level for time period T. Therefore, employment is equal to function of actual price level in time period T divided by expected price level for time period T. Actual price level at time period T is equal to Pt minus 1 multiplied by 1 plus rate of inflation. Rate of inflation is equal to I is equal to, it can be measured through change in price level or change in money wage. Therefore, actual price level at time period T is equal to Pt minus 1 multiplied by 1 plus I. Expected price level for time period T is equal to Pt minus 1 multiplied by 1 plus expected rate of increase in price level. Expected rate of increase in price level is equal to I cap. Expected price level for time period T is equal to Pt minus 1 multiplied by 1 plus I cap. The employment would be given by the function as shown here. In case of limit n tends to infinity, 1 plus I upon n raised to the power of n is equal to e raised to the power of I. Hence, 1 plus I can be expressed as e raised to the power of I, and 1 plus I cap can be expressed as e raised to the power of I cap. Therefore, employment given by E is a function of e raised to the power of I minus I cap. If a raised to the power of I minus I cap is greater than 1, then it implies an increase in employment level. However, if e raised to the power of I minus I cap is less than 1, then it implies a decrease in employment level. So now employment level becomes only the function of I and I cap, since when I minus I cap is greater than 0, then e raised to the power of I minus I cap is greater than 1, and when I minus I cap is less than 1, then e raised to the power of I minus I cap is less than 1. Therefore, E is equal to function of I minus I cap, and when I minus I cap is greater than 0, then employment level would be rising, And when I minus I cap is less than 0, then employment level will be declining. Hence, there is positive relationship between employment level E and I minus I cap. As there is positive relationship between E and I minus I cap, it can be said that F dash I minus I cap is greater than 0. Expectation of change in price level in future is based on actual change in price level. Expected change in price level converges with actual change in price level over time, but at impeding pace. Hence, there is time lag when expectation converges with actuality. This is the basic tenet of sticky wage price assumption. Hence, expected change in price level can be expressed as function of actual change in price level. In equation form, it can be represented as I cap is equal to G bracket I. Due to the axiom of sticky wages, delta I cap upon delta I or G dash is greater than 0 but less than 1. If G dash is equal to 0, then it implies downward rigidity of prices as propounded by Keynes. Downward rigidity of price implies that wages and prices do not change before full employment level. As there is no expectation of change in price level, therefore G dash is equal to 0. In an extreme case, when G dash is equal to 1, then it validates the assumption of wage price flexibility as held by classical economists. In such a case, there will be no change in real wages, and as a consequence, there will be no effect on employment level due to inflation. The axiom of sticky wages model holds that G dash is greater than 0, so there is no downward rigidity of price as emphasized by Keynes, and G dash shall also be less than 1 so as to invalidate the assumption of wage price flexibility. Hence, 0 is less than G dash is less than 1. Now again considering function E, that is, E is equal to function of I minus I cap. Delta E upon delta I is equal to F dash I minus I cap multiplied by 1 minus G dash. Now both f dash I minus I cap and 1 minus G dash are greater than 0. Therefore, delta E upon delta I is also greater than 0. Hence, there is positive relationship between employment level and change in price level. Positive relationship means if there is rise in price level, then employment level also rises. And if there is decline in price level, then employment level also declines. N minus N star divided by N star. N is equal to actual employment level and N star is equal to natural level of employment. If n is greater than n star, then there is increase in employment level, and if n is less than n star, then there is decrease in employment level. On the basis of the above relationship, the level of unemployment can be expressed as follows. Unemployment level, that is U, is equal to n star minus n divided by n star is equal to minus n star divided by n star is equal to minus E. Delta U upon delta E is equal to minus 1. The relationship between unemployment level and change in price level can be expressed as du upon di. The value of du upon di can be determined by applying the chain rule as shown here. As already proved that f dash I minus I cap multiplied by 1 minus G dash is greater than 0, hence minus f dash I minus I cap multiplied by 1 minus G dash is less than 0. Therefore, delta U upon delta I is less than 0. Hence, there is negative relationship between the level of unemployment and changes in price level. This implies that as there is increase in price level, there is decrease in unemployment level, and when there is decrease in price level, there is increase in unemployment level. Due to this negative relationship, it is now evident that there exists a trade-off between unemployment and inflation. The relationship between unemployment and expectation. As emphasized above, the expected rate of change in price level plays an important role in the determination of money wage and employment level. Now, for analyzing the role of expectations in determining the money wage and employment level, consider the relationships which have been already discussed. That is, delta U upon delta I is equal to minus F dash I minus I cap multiplied by 1 minus G dash. Consequently, delta I upon delta U can be expressed as follows. Delta I upon delta U is equal to 1 divided by minus F dash I minus I cap multiplied by 1 minus G dash is the function of actual rate of change in price level and has been previously shown through function I cap is equal to G bracket I. Now expectations can be high or low. It is pertinent to know how the increase in expectation affects unemployment level. For this, consider two functions. First function is I cap is equal to AI, and the second function is I cap is equal to BI. Now, 1 is greater than B, which is greater than A, which is greater than 0. This implies that in the first function, the expectation of increase in price level is low, and in the second function, the expectation is high. Now it is important to know how this would impact the Phillips curve. The impact on Phillips curve can be observed through the slope as shown below. Delta I upon delta U is equal to 1 divided by minus F dash I minus I cap multiplied by 1 minus G dash. G dash, that is delta I cap upon delta I, is equal to A in the first function, and in the second function G dash is equal to B. F dash I minus I cap and 1 minus G dash shall always remain positive as discussed. In the first function, both I cap and G dash are comparatively less than in the second function. As a consequence, delta I upon delta U of the first function is more than in absolute terms, that is ignoring the negative sign, in relation to delta I upon delta U of the second function. This implies that the curve relating to the first function would be flatter than the curve relating to the second function. In the diagram on the x-axis, unemployment rate is shown, and on the y-axis, the rate of change in money wage as a percentage is shown. The curve relating to the first function is flatter than the curve relating to the second function. It is already explained that so high expectation of change in price level has turned into actual inflation. Hence, high expectation of inflation works as a self-fulfilling prophecy, thereby resulting in high inflation. Thus, when expectation of change in price level in the economy is high, then the policymakers should be cautious while making a trade-off between inflation and unemployment, since low unemployment rate can only be achieved at a high level of inflation. In the long run, expectation converges with actuality. Thus, in the long run, the axiom of wage price flexibility validates itself, and as a consequence, in the long run, sticky wages model become redundant. As in the long run, there is perfect flexibility of wage and price, so the rate of change of money wage does not have any influence on employment level. Now consider the function I cap is equal to G bracket I. In the short run, when sticky wages model holds, 0 is less than G dash is less than 1. However, in the long run, when expected change in price level is equal to actual change in price level, then G dash is equal to 1. Now, taking the value of G dash is equal to 1, then the slope of long run Phillips curve can be determined as delta I upon delta U is equal to 1 divided by minus F dash I minus I cap multiplied by 1 minus G dash. Now with G dash is equal to 1, the value of delta I upon delta U shall approach to infinity, since 1 minus G dash shall become 0. Hence the Phillips curve in the long run becomes vertical to the x-axis. In the diagram, on the x-axis, unemployment rate is shown, and on the y-axis, the rate of change in money wage as a percentage is shown. Various short-run Phillips curves and a long-run Phillips curve are depicted in the diagram. Expected rate of change of price level converges with. Hence, in the long run, inflation does not have any role in determining employment level, and as such, there exists no trade-off between inflation and unemployment in the long run.
Let us now recapitulate what we have learnt in this module. In this module, initially, the relationship between inflation and unemployment as studied by A.W. Philip in 1958 was discussed. Phillips estimated a curve for his observations and he found a negative relationship between inflation and unemployment. This negative relationship suggests that there is a trade-off between inflation and unemployment. After that, the empirical relationship relating to this trade-off was discussed. As per classical economists, there was no such trade-off between unemployment and inflation. Classical economists assumed perfect wage price flexibility, and as such any increase in the money wage does not cause any change in the level of employment. However, empirically there exists a relationship that between price level and employment. This empirical relationship suggests that the model of wage price flexibility is not appropriate under such circumstances. Thus, there is a need for another model that could explain the relationship more appropriately. The model for explaining this relationship is the sticky wages model. The sticky wages model is based on the fact that expected rate of change in price level is different from the actual rate of change in the price level. The expected rate of change in the price level is always less than the actual rate of change in the price level. As a consequence, if there is any increase in money wage, then employees mistakenly believe that their real wage has gone up, and due to this belief that their real wage has gone up, there is an increase in the labor effort. This results in the increase in the level of employment when employment is being measured in terms of hours of work. With this assumption, the sticky wages model was established, and through this we could observe a negative relationship between unemployment and inflation. Thereafter, the relationship between unemployment and expectation is discussed. If expectations are high, then the Phillips curve is steeper than in the case where expectations are low. As a consequence, in case of high expectations, if policy makers want to control unemployment rate, then it would cause higher inflation in the economy. Last, it is discussed that the expectations built up gradually over time so that there is a convergence with actuality. In the long run, expected rate of change in the price level becomes equal to the actual rate of change in the price level. Due to this adaptive phenomenon of expected rate of change in the price level, the model of wage price flexibility validates itself in the long run. Due to validation of the model of wage price flexibility in the long run, employment level becomes insensitive to changes in the price level. Therefore, there is no trade-off between inflation and unemployment in the long run. In such a case, the Phillips curve becomes vertical to the x-axis against a downward sloping Phillips curve in the short run.